Station Omega-7 floated in the void between stars, a massive ring of metal and glass that housed the Galactic Federation's greatest pilots. The station spun slowly, creating gravity for the dozens of alien species who trained there. Ships from 100 worlds docked at its outer ports, bringing new candidates every week. Training Officer Korvik walked through the Academy corridors, his green scales clicking against each other with every step. As a Varlak, he stood 8 feet tall, with powerful legs and a thick tail that helped him balance. He had trained pilots for 30 years. He had seen thousands of candidates from every corner of the galaxy. Today was different. Today, the first human would attempt the simulator test. Korvik entered the observation deck where other instructors had already gathered. The wide windows showed the testing chamber below, where a single simulator pod waited. Around him, teachers from different worlds whispered to each other. A 4-armed Quelox instructor turned to face him. "Have you seen it yet?" she asked, her mandibles clicking nervously. The human. "Not yet," Korvik replied. He checked his datapad. Lieutenant Jake Turner, from a planet called Earth. They joined the Federation only 6 months ago. 6 months. A feathered Altarian ruffled his wings in surprise. Most species wait years before sending pilots here. Are they that confident or that foolish? Before Korvik could answer, the doors slid open. A figure walked in, and the room fell silent. The human was smaller than most of them expected. Jake Turner stood just under 6 feet tall, with no scales, feathers, or extra limbs. His skin was a light brown color, and short dark hair covered only the top of his head. He wore the standard Federation flight suit, which looked strange on his bipedal frame. But it was his eyes that made Korvik pause. They moved constantly, scanning the room, taking in every detail. They held a sharpness that reminded Korvik of predator species, yet also showed intelligence and curiosity. "Lieutenant Turner reporting for pilot evaluation," Jake said. His voice was clear and steady. Korvik stepped forward. "Welcome to the Federation Flight Academy. I am Training Officer Korvik. These are your evaluators." He gestured to the other instructors. "You understand the testing procedure?" "Yes, sir." "Enter the simulator, complete the scenarios, demonstrate pilot capability." Jake's posture was relaxed but alert, like a spring ready to release. "Good. Most candidates require multiple attempts. The average is 15 tries before passing. Our current record holder, Pilot Zenth from Altair, succeeded on his 8th attempt." Jake nodded but said nothing. His expression didn't change. A young Persine instructor, his blue skin still bright with youth, leaned toward another teacher. "Look at him. No fear, no excitement. Does he not understand what he faces?" "Perhaps humans don't feel emotions like we do," the other whispered back. But Korvik had been watching more carefully. He saw the tiny movements in Jake's fingers, the way they twitched in complex patterns, the slight shift in his stance, distributing weight evenly, the way his breathing had slowed, becoming deeper and more controlled. This human was preparing for something. But what? "The simulator contains scenarios of increasing difficulty," Korvik continued. "You will face equipment failures, hostile encounters, and navigation challenges. The test adapts to your responses. It will find your limits." "I understand," Jake said simply. "Do you have any questions before we begin?" Jake looked at the simulator pod through the observation window. For a moment, something flickered in his eyes. Was it excitement? Amusement? Korvik couldn't tell. "Just one," Jake said. "What happens if someone beats all the scenarios?" The room went quiet. Several instructors exchanged glances. Korvik's tail swayed, a sign of confusion among his people. "The simulator is designed to be unbeatable, Lieutenant. It will continue generating harder scenarios until the pilot fails. That is how we measure capability." Jake nodded slowly. "I see. Let's begin then." As the human turned toward the testing chamber, Korvik felt an odd sensation in his scales. In 30 years, no candidate had ever asked that question. Something about this human was very, very different. Commander Zora clicked her way across the metal floor, her 6 insect-like legs moving in perfect rhythm. As a Kretak, she stood only 5 feet tall, but her compound eyes could see in every direction at once. She had designed many of the simulator's most difficult scenarios herself. She found Jake Turner standing in the preparation room, studying the simulator pod through a reinforced window. The human's head turned as she approached, and she noticed how smoothly he tracked her movement. "Lieutenant Turner," she said, her voice carrying the distinctive buzz of her species. "I am Commander Zara, head of the simulation program. Before you begin, I must explain what you will face." Jake turned to face her fully. "I appreciate that, Commander." Zara activated a holographic display between them. The simulator pod appeared in miniature, floating in blue light. This is not a simple flight test. The Federation simulator represents the combined knowledge of 57 space-faring species. It contains scenarios we have encountered across the galaxy. "Real situations?" Jake asked, leaning forward slightly. "Yes, every scenario is based on actual events. Pilots have died in these situations. The simulator recreates them perfectly." She touched the hologram, and it showed a pilot struggling with multiple system failures. "We start simple, basic navigation, standard combat. But the difficulty increases rapidly." Jake watched the hologram with intense focus. "How does it determine difficulty?" "The system monitors your neural patterns, reaction times, and stress responses. It finds your weaknesses and exploits them. When you show mastery of one challenge, it combines multiple challenges together." "So it learns," Jake said quietly. Zara's antennae twitched, a sign of surprise. Most candidates focused on the physical challenges. This human immediately understood the deeper test. The pilot lounge was filled with nervous energy. Candidates from 7 different species sat in small groups, sharing stories about their simulator experiences. The room smelled of various alien foods and drinks, creating a strange but not unpleasant mixture. Jake entered quietly and looked around. Several aliens glanced at him, then quickly returned to their conversations. He was still a curiosity here. Humans were too new to the Federation for Jake climbed into the simulator pod and felt the neural interface connect to his temples. The cockpit closed around him with a soft hiss. Screens flickered to life, showing a standard Federation fighter's controls. Everything felt real. The seat's texture, the cool air, even the slight vibration of idle engines. In the observation deck, 20 instructors watched their monitors. Korvik stood in the center, his scales tight with anticipation. Commander Zora perched near the main display, her compound eyes reflecting dozens of tiny screens. "Simulation beginning," the AI announced. "Level 1, basic navigation." Jake found himself in open space near a space station. Holographic rings appeared in sequence, a simple obstacle course. Most pilots treated this as a warm-up, flying carefully through each ring. Jake hit maximum thrust immediately. "What is he doing?" gasped a young instructor. "The safety protocols recommend half speed for initial navigation." Jake's fighter screamed through the rings, rolling and diving at speeds that made the watching instructors nervous. He finished in 30 seconds, a full minute faster than average. Level 2, asteroid field navigation. Thousands of rocks appeared around Jake's fighter. The standard approach was slow, careful movement between the larger asteroids. Jake did something else entirely. He began using the asteroids themselves. "Is he?" Bouncing his shields off the rocks. Zara's antennae stood straight up. Jake wasn't avoiding the smaller asteroids. He was hitting them at precise angles, using his shields to ricochet from one to another, creating the shortest possible path through the field. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was working. Level 3, basic combat. 6 drone fighters materialized. Jake didn't wait for them to attack. He flew straight at them, weapons firing. But his pattern made no sense to the watching instructors. "His shooting is terrible," Someone muttered. "He's missing by kilometers." Then the drones started exploding. "He's not aiming at them," Korvik realized, his tail lashing with excitement. "He's predicting where they'll dodge." Jake had fired where the drones would be, not where they were. The AI's evasion patterns, designed to avoid incoming fire, flew the drones directly into Jake's shots. Level 4. Combat with Complications. Now things got serious. 20 fighters appeared while Jake's systems began failing. Navigation went offline. Weapons started malfunctioning. Half his engines shut down. The instructors leaned forward. This was where most pilots started to panic. Jake laughed. The sound came through the communication system, startling everyone. It wasn't nervous laughter or hysteria. It sounded joyful. Jake's damaged fighter spun wildly, but it wasn't out of control. He was using the spin to spread his limited firepower in all directions. When his main guns failed, he overloaded his shield generator, turning it into a weapon. The explosion destroyed 6 enemy fighters. "He just sacrificed his only defense," an instructor whispered. "No," Zura said quietly. "He turned his defense into an attack. Watch." Without shields, Jake flew directly into the enemy formation. The AI's fighters couldn't shoot without hitting each other. Jake used them as shields while picking them off one by one with his remaining weapons. Level 5. Multi-system cascade failure. Everything started breaking at once. Life support failing. Gravity generators malfunctioning. Navigation computer crashing. A wormhole opened nearby, its gravitational forces tearing at the ship. More enemy fighters swarmed in. Standard protocol was to stabilize systems first, then deal with threats. Jake ignored his failing systems completely. "His oxygen is dropping," Korvik reported. "He has minutes before hypoxia sets in." Jake's response was to fly directly into the wormhole. "He'll be torn apart," someone shouted. The fighter disappeared into the swirling vortex. For a moment, the screens went dark. Then Jake emerged from the opposite side of the battlefield, behind the enemy formation. The wormhole's gravity had accelerated him to incredible speeds. He used that speed to ram through the enemy fighters like a bullet. His ship was disintegrating. Systems failed one after another. The cockpit filled with smoke. Warning alarms screamed from every direction. Jake was still smiling. "Impossible," Commander Zora whispered, watching the human pilot turn certain death into tactical advantage. "He enjoys this. He actually enjoys this." The simulation continued to escalate, throwing increasingly impossible scenarios at the human. Jake met each challenge with solutions that defied conventional wisdom, military doctrine, and sometimes physics itself. The instructors watched in stunned silence as their unbeatable simulator faced something it had never encountered before. A pilot who thought dying was just another problem to solve. Creatively, the simulator had escalated beyond anything the instructors had seen. Jake's fighter was barely holding together. Sparks flew from damaged consoles. Half the cockpit displays showed static. The smell of burning circuits filled the air. Level 15. Terminal Scenario, the AI announced in its emotionless voice. This was it, the impossible level, the scenario designed to be unwinnable. A massive dreadnought appeared, surrounded by hundreds of fighters. Jake's ship suddenly lost all power. No engines, no weapons, no life support. He was floating dead in space as enemy forces closed in. "The Kobayashi Maru scenario," Commander Zora said quietly. "No pilot has ever survived past this point." The watching instructors nodded. It was designed to test how pilots faced certain death. The correct response was to activate distress beacons and prepare for capture or death with dignity. Jake started typing on his dead console. "What's he doing?" Korvik leaned closer to his screen. "His systems are completely offline." Jake's fingers moved with practiced speed. He wasn't trying to restore power. He was accessing something else entirely. "He's in the maintenance subsystems," a tech instructor said, confused. "But those aren't meant for combat operations." Jake found what he wanted, The fighter's waste disposal system. Every ship had one. It was the most basic, overlooked function on any vessel. He reversed the flow. Is he? Zara's compound eyes widened. The waste system began ejecting material into space. Not randomly. Jake was creating a pattern. The frozen waste crystals formed a cloud around his ship, spreading outward in calculated trajectories. When the enemy fighters opened fire, their laser weapons hit the crystallized waste. The beams scattered, refracted, and reflected in thousands of directions. Enemy fighters began hitting each other with their own redirected fire. He turned sewage into a mirror shield, Korvac said slowly. He weaponized the toilet. But Jake wasn't done. He used the last of his battery power to overload the fighter's coffee maker. The explosion was tiny, barely noticeable, but it created just enough thrust to start his dead ship spinning. The spin lined up perfectly with the dreadnought's approach vector. Jake manually released his fighter's fuel tanks. They floated free, directly in the massive ship's path. Then he did something that made every instructor gasp. He opened his cockpit to space. He's committing suicide. Someone shouted. No, Jake had timed it perfectly. The explosive decompression shot him out of the fighter like a bullet. He flew through space in his pressure suit, using small attitude adjustments to guide his path. The dreadnought's point defense systems ignored him. He was just debris. Biological matter, not a threat. Jake landed on the dreadnought's hull. He crawled along its surface to a maintenance hatch, using his suit's emergency tools to force it open. He was inside the enemy ship. How does he know where to go? An instructor asked. He's never seen this ship design before. But Jake moved with purpose. He found the dreadnought's main reactor. Its massive power core thrummed with energy enough to destroy a small moon. Jake began typing again, this time on the reactor's control panel. He wasn't trying to shut it down or overload it. He was doing something far more clever. He programmed it to sing. The reactor's harmonics shifted. The vibrations changed frequency. Throughout the massive ship, every system began to resonate. Bulkheads vibrated. Circuits hummed. The entire dreadnought began to shake itself apart from the inside. As the great ship started to break up, Jake found an escape pod. He launched himself clear just as the dreadnought exploded in a cascade of harmonic destruction. The simulation froze. Then, for the first time in its history, it displayed a message none of the instructors had ever seen. Scenario completed. Unconventional solution. Achieved. The observation deck fell completely silent. 20 instructors stared at their screens in disbelief. Jake's voice came through the communicator. He sounded slightly out of breath but calm. That was fun. What's next? Commander Zara slowly turned to Korvac. Her voice shook slightly. He beat the unbeatable scenario. And he called it fun. The implications hung in the air like smoke. If humans could solve impossible problems by thinking this differently, what else could they do? What else would they change? The Federation Council's emergency chamber had never been activated for a training incident before. Now 50 of the galaxy's highest-ranking officials sat in a circle, watching Jake Turner's simulation footage for the third time. Head Administrator Velix, an ancient being with crystalline skin, paused the recording. Let's review what we just witnessed. This human cadet used waste systems as weapons, turned a coffee maker into an engine, and destroyed a dreadnought by making it vibrate. Have I missed anything? He also seemed to enjoy dying repeatedly, added Council Member Thrix, whose tentacles writhed with nervousness. The psychological profiles make no sense. Korvac stood at the center, feeling very small among such powerful beings. With respect, Council, the human didn't just pass. He achieved a perfect score by solving unsolvable scenarios. Explain, Velix commanded. Commander Zara stepped forward, her wings buzzing softly. Every impossible scenario has an expected failure point. Pilots are supposed to demonstrate good judgment by recognizing when situations become hopeless. Lieutenant Turner never acknowledged hopelessness. He kept creating new solutions until he won. That's not natural, someone muttered. No, Vilix agreed. It's not. Bring in the human. Jake entered the chamber, looking remarkably calm for someone who had just broken every training record in Federation history. He stood straight but relaxed, his strange human eyes scanning the room with curiosity rather than fear. Lieutenant Turner, Vilix began, your performance requires explanation. How did you devise these unusual solutions? Jake tilted his head slightly. They weren't unusual to me, sir. They were just games tactics. Games? Several council members spoke at once. Yes, sir. On Earth, we have entertainment called video games. We face impossible challenges for fun. The harder the game, the more we enjoy it. Velix's crystal skin shifted colors, a sign of deep thought. You're saying humans practice defeating impossible scenarios for entertainment. Since childhood, Jake confirmed. I started when I was 5 years old. By age 10, I had died in simulations approximately 12,000 times. The chamber fell silent. Several council members looked physically ill. 12,000 deaths, Fricks whispered. And you continued playing. Of course, each death taught me something. In gaming, we call it getting good. You die, you learn, you adapt, you overcome. Council member Ritex, a mechanical being from the Silicon Alliance, processed this information. Your neural pathways. They've been conditioned to see failure as data, not trauma. Exactly, Jake nodded. Death is just a reset button. A chance to try a new strategy. Velix stood slowly, his full 12-foot height commanding attention. Lieutenant, describe your thought process during the final scenario. Jake's face lit up. Oh, that was a classic no-win scenario. In gaming, we call it a puzzle boss. You can't beat it with normal tactics, so you have to break the rules. Break the rules. Think outside the intended gameplay. Use game mechanics in ways the designers didn't plan for. Like using the waste system. The programmers included it for realism, but never thought someone would weaponize it. Commander Zera leaned forward. You said, programmers. You think of our simulator as a game. Everything is a game if you approach it right, Jake said simply. The universe has rules. Physics has rules. Games have rules. The fun part is finding creative ways to use those rules. The council members exchanged worried looks. This human wasn't just good at flying. He saw reality itself as a game to be solved creatively. Lieutenant, Velix said carefully, are all humans like this? Jake smiled. Most of us, yes. Though I'm considered pretty casual. You should see the professional gamers. They're really scary. Professional gamers. Velix's voice cracked slightly. People who do this for a living. They'd probably find ways to beat your simulator that would break it completely. As Jake left the chamber, the council sat in stunned silence. Finally, Frick spoke what everyone was thinking. If they treat real combat like they treat their games. We need new rules, Velix concluded. Immediately. The most powerful beings in the galaxy had just discovered that humans were a species that practiced impossible scenarios for fun. The implications were terrifying. The council debate had lasted 6 hours. Velix had never seen such passionate disagreement among the Federation's leaders. Half wanted to ban humans from pilot training entirely. The other half recognized that human pilots could be their greatest asset against future threats. Council member Ritex projected holographic data above the table. Analysis complete. Human neural plasticity is unlike anything we've documented. Their brains literally rewire themselves with each gaming session. It gets worse, added Thrix, pulling up cultural data. Their entertainment industry produces thousands of new games yearly, each one designed to be harder than the last. They have competitions where millions watch people die repeatedly for entertainment. They call it esports. Commander Zora added quietly. Professional teams, sponsorships, training facilities. They've industrialized the process of getting better at impossible tasks. Felix studied the data. Humanity had turned dying into an art form. They had created an entire culture around facing impossible odds for fun. And now they were bringing that mindset into real space combat. "Show them the projections," he ordered. A young analyst stepped forward nervously. "If human pilots maintain their current improvement rate, within 6 months they'll solve every scenario in our database. Within a year, they'll be creating tactics we can't counter." "And if they get multiple attempts?" someone asked. The analyst's feathers drooped. "Our simulations suggest that a human pilot with unlimited attempts could destabilize our entire combat doctrine. They'd find exploits in reality itself." The chamber erupted in worried voices. Felix raised a hand for silence. "We have a proposal from the Military Advisory Board." Admiral Kirak, a veteran of 50 campaigns, stood. His scared carapace told stories of real combat, not simulations. "We recommend a new protocol. Humans get 1 attempt. Only 1. Will that stop them?" "No," Kirak admitted, "but it will slow them down. 1 attempt means they can't refine their solutions, can't perfect their exploits. They'll still be incredibly effective, but within manageable parameters." "What about Lieutenant Turner?" Fricks asked. "He's already demonstrated what 1 attempt can achieve." "His performance is classified beyond top secret," Felix decided. "That recording never leaves this room. We tell the academies he passed, nothing more. And future human candidates." Felix turned to Korvik, who had remained silent throughout the debate. "Training officer, your thoughts?" Korvik's tail swayed as he organized his words. "Humans will change everything. We can't stop that. But we can channel it. Give them 1 attempt. Make it a challenge. They seem to like those." "He's right," Zara added. "Frame it as the ultimate test. 1 shot at glory." Humans respond well to that kind of narrative. The council voted. It wasn't unanimous, but the majority was clear. Effective immediately, Felix announced, "Human pilots are limited to 1 simulator attempt. We'll call it the Turner Protocol." "Why name it after him?" Ritex asked. "Because," Felix said heavily, "future humans should know that one of their kind scared the entire Federation leadership into changing 1,000-year-old rules. It might make them think twice." 3 days later, the new regulation appeared in every training manual. Special Protocol 7 Turner. Human candidates are permitted 1 attempt at certification simulation. No exceptions. No appeals. At the academy, Jake Turner was packing his gear, preparing for his new assignment as the Federation's first human combat pilot. He found Crix and Melora in the cafeteria. 1 attempt only. Crix was reading from his datapad. "Just for humans. Can you believe it?" Jake smiled. "Makes sense. Multiple attempts would make it too easy." Melora's liquid form rippled with disbelief. "Too easy? You solved the unsolvable scenario." "Yeah, but imagine if I could practice it first. Where's the fun in that?" As Jake left for his new posting, whispers spread through the academy. The human who had broken the simulator. The pilot who saw death as a minor inconvenience. The reason for the strangest rule in Federation history. And somewhere on Earth, millions of humans continued gaming, getting better at impossible challenges, preparing for their own chances at the stars. The Federation had no idea what was coming. 6 months later, the Academy corridors buzzed with new rumors. 12 more humans had taken the simulator test. Each passed on their first attempt, finding solutions that left instructors speechless. Training Officer Korvik stood in the observation deck, watching the latest recording. A human pilot named Lisa Park had just defeated a fleet by flying her damaged fighter into a gas giant, using the planet's magnetic field to create an EMP weapon. "They're getting more creative," Commander Zora noted, landing beside him. "This one played something called Dark Souls growing up," Korvik said, reading her file. "Apparently it's a game where you die hundreds of times to learn boss patterns." Through the window, they could see cadets gathered in groups. The topic was always the same: the Turner Protocol, and the humans who kept breaking their simulator with one try. In the pilot lounge, Crix was on his 15th attempt. He had improved significantly, lasting hours instead of minutes. But he still couldn't pass. Beside him, a young Varlak cadet named Zeke downloaded something onto his personal device. "What's that?" Crix asked. "Human flight simulator," Zeke replied nervously. "Found it on their internet. Want to understand how they think." Zeke launched the program and selected the highest difficulty. His fighter appeared surrounded by enemies with no shields and half an engine. He died in 12 seconds. "How is this entertainment?" he gasped. But he tried again and again. After an hour, he was lasting 30 seconds. After 2 hours, a full minute. His claws moved faster, reactions sharpened. Other cadets gathered to watch the Varlak play the human game. Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Federation's newest battlecruiser, Captain Jake Turner faced his first real combat situation. Pirates had ambushed a convoy of refugee ships. The odds were 7-1 against him. His crew, a mix of species, watched nervously as Jake smiled at the tactical display. "Captain," his Altarian weapons officer warned, "we're heavily outnumbered." "Perfect," Jake said calmly. "Real combat. No respawns. No save points. This is where it gets interesting." He began issuing orders that made no conventional sense. Divert power from weapons to kitchen systems. Vent atmosphere from Cargo Bay 3. Reverse the gravity plating in Section 7. The pirates, expecting standard Federation tactics, flew directly into chaos. Vented atmosphere created a fog that confused their sensors. Reversed gravity sent loose cargo flying through space like projectiles. The kitchen systems, overcharged and overheating, created electromagnetic interference that scrambled targeting computers. Jake's single ship carved through the pirate fleet like they were tutorial enemies. His crew watched in amazement as their human captain turned their battle cruiser into 100 different weapons. Back on Earth, the Federation's recruitment office was overwhelmed. Young humans lined up by the thousands, each one eager to take their single shot at the infamous simulator. A recruitment officer, dealing with his 100th application that day, asked a teenager why she wanted to be a pilot. "Are you kidding?" she replied, eyes bright with excitement. "One attempt only. No retries. That's the ultimate hardcore mode." At the academy, more alien cadets were downloading human games. They suffered through countless deaths, slowly beginning to understand. It wasn't about winning easily. It was about the joy of overcoming the impossible. Commander Zara found Korvik in his office, reading reports from across the Federation. Human pilots were revolutionizing combat tactics everywhere. Pirates were retreating to deeper space. Enemy forces were learning to avoid any ship with a human pilot. "I've been thinking," Korvik said quietly. "What happens when our enemies start recruiting human pilots?" Zara's wings trembled. She hadn't considered that possibility. Far away, in a sector of space the Federation hadn't explored yet, alien scouts watched recordings of human pilots in action. They transmitted the data back to their empire with a simple message: "We need to start playing their games." The Turner Protocol had changed everything. But it was only the beginning. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for the stars by dying repeatedly in basements and bedrooms across Earth. Now the galaxy would learn what game over really meant.